I'm going to start with this, and the question is, why should we even be concerned with this question about the future options of urology practice ownership? Well, I give you here three reasons. The first is that healthcare is changing. Everyone knows that. I'm going to touch on that in a few slides next. And as a result, urologists, and 2/3 of the independent practitioners here validate that, urologists are asking if they really can continue to thrive in their current practice configuration. And finally, whether urologists are asking this question or not, they're being bombarded with options even from the outside, even if they haven't sought them out. And that's the reason why someone like me is invited to talk about this topic at a meeting like this. So these were the ARS questions. So how is healthcare changing? I mean, I think everybody understands that healthcare is consolidating. And we all know this has been going on for some time. We don't always appreciate that healthcare is one of the last industries in America that has not consolidated. You don't see many corner hardware stores. You see a lot of Lowe's. You don't see many corner pharmacies. You see a lot of CVS and Walgreens. And the fragmentation in healthcare is one of the last major industries in the country that is not consolidated. So you see a huge trend in health system mergers on this slide. And then here you see consolidation of physicians in terms of hospital employment. And in fact, in 2018, the AUA, I think it was 18 survey, 50% of urologists are now hospital employed. So we know consolidation is happening, and the question is, will we be part of that, and how will we be part of that? So that's one way healthcare is changing. And furthermore, I don't need to really run through this litany. We know that there's reimbursement complexity with MACRA and MIPS. We also know that there's reimbursement opportunity because the coming of value-based care and the potential of at-risk contracting is actually going to give us profit opportunity. Our groups need increasingly sophisticated management tools, as listed in number 3 here, and something I think we don't always think about, and that's the increasing complexity of the clinical practice of medicine and how hard it is to really have the resources to provide the gamut of specialty care without greater scale. So the question is, what can independent urologists do to navigate these changes? And the answer is very simple, that they must acquire scale. Now, my group, the urology group in Cincinnati, we formed in 1996 as an aggregation of multiple small practices. We now have 35 physicians representing almost 70% of the urology market for 2 million lives. And so you would think that we'd be pretty happy, but you know what? We're really not. We don't actually think that we have the scale to do all of the things that to navigate the challenges that I mentioned on the previous slides. However, there's a problem. Doctors are afraid of scale. Now, why are doctors always afraid of scale? Because they equate scale with a loss of independence. And so my proposition to you, before I waste any time talking about the detail of private equity, and I see I'm already half done with my time, we need to understand and rethink what it means to be independent. And I want to submit to you that, we have to begin to do that. Now, a solo practitioner is truly 100% independent. They don't answer to anyone but themselves, but they have no scale. In my group, 30 partners have some scale, but they're not really as independent as they think. They have 1/30th share in an organization, and they're subject to the policies and procedures of the group. So even doctors in groups today that think of themselves as independent may not be truly as independent as they think. So what is the new concept of independence that we must start embracing in our specialty? The new concept of independence is that the sine qua non of independent practice is a practice in which physicians own equity in the practice. Equity ownership means that physicians have the status of owners and that physicians can profit from ownership when the group does well over time, which, I'm not making an argument one way or the other, is really not the case for employed physicians. We have to start thinking about independence as equivalent to having equity ownership. So it's my premise that the successful independent group of the future will have meaningful scale and maintain physician ownership. And there are a couple of options. One is investor-driven consolidation, commonly referred to as private equity, and another is something I call organic consolidation, meaning doctors are somehow going to do it on their own. Now, with respect to investor-driven consolidation, private equity, let's ask this question very quickly. Who's better off? A doctor in my group who has 1 of 30 shares in a practice, wholly physician-owned, and the stock is valued at X dollars per share, or a doctor in a different group who has about 1 in 60 shares because that practice took on a 51% investor, but then a few years later, due to the growth and equity appreciation of the practice, those shares are worth 4X. Who's better off? I mean, I don't know, but I can certainly make an argument that the second doctor may be better off. Now, what are the pros and cons of a private equity transaction? The pros are we can achieve scale. There's another pro in that the initial sale of a portion of a practice provides liquidity. And I don't have a ton of time, but I want you to think about this. Providing liquidity at the time of an initial transaction is not really about paying out older doctors. It's really about securing the future of younger doctors. Now, why would I say that? If a younger doctor can get a chunk of money, which is invested, and then over the course of time is the equivalent of 13 or 14 years of their income, it's a hedge against future reimbursement risk. We all understand that the healthcare system is facing true reimbursement risk. And just like you might not want all of your stock in Apple, you might want to take you're investing all of your future in a practice, and CMS makes one rule and your reimbursement goes down. So partial liquidity at the beginning of a transaction represents a hedge on reimbursement risk. Equity partners bring significant outside expertise to help promote growth and success, and physicians have what is called rollover equity, meaning ownership that they retain that can grow in value, like my previous example of the 4X. But what are the potential cons of this type of arrangement? Well, I would submit that doctors maintain independence since they have equity, but as the entity grows in size, the doctor's proximity to management may decrease, so they may perceive less control. Having said that, docs still retain a significant voice in management because decision-making is shared between doctors and equity partners. The successful venture has to be a true partnership. And I only have a couple of slides left. And then I want to transition to the concept of organic consolidation. This is when consolidation occurs when geographically disparate groups merge or create an MSO across geographies without an outside investor. And we've seen that in Florida with Scott Sellinger's group, and we've seen it elsewhere in the United States. The advantages is we achieve scale and doctors maintain all the decision making. But there are some significant disadvantages to this approach. Without an initial liquidity event, not only do we not have a hedge on future reimbursement risk, but it can be difficult to convince the groups to get together. And although the entity is wholly physician-owned, as it grows, doctors can still feel a lack of control. And finally, an open question in my mind is, without the equity partner, can we really achieve business and clinical integration without a capital partner that provides capital, expertise, and rigor? So that's it. I went a little bit over, and I can't get into the weeds of what a PE transaction looks like in 10 minutes. Thank you.